The story of the Frome Festival started when I was elected a town and district councillor in 1999. I'll leave the full story of how and why for another time. Suffice it to say that I ended up as chair of the regulatory board for Mendip District Council, dealing with matters of Mendip-wide importance, and at the last count, responsible for around 23 committees for both the town and district councils. I was involved with all things relating to the arts, conservation, regeneration and promotion of Frome, which was very run down at the time, with the majority of Catherine Hill boarded up. So it did cross my mind that Frome could benefit from something to promote it, perhaps an annual festival of some kind. These thoughts coincided with Sean MacDonald taking over the management of the George Hotel. He also had a printer and photocopying business and was passionate in promoting Frome. He set up the wonderful Frome Place Committee, a group dedicated to the promotion of Frome to the outside world. As a councillor, I was invited to the meeting of that committee. And when asked for promotional ideas, I suggested the possibility of a festival in Frome. This was greeted with enthusiasm. And by the greatest of good luck, a lady came up to me and said she was interested in helping. Her name was Anne Goby, and she was a volunteer at the Frome Tourist Information Centre. Her background was with the BBC in children's television, and she could do everything that I could not do, which was run an office, which was beyond me because as an actor, I never worked in that type of environment. The idea took off, and David McGregor, the vice chair of the wonderful Frome Committee, and incidentally the founder of the Frome Times, proposed that I should be appointed the festival director, and I was elected unanimously. I was pleased to be invited to the first meeting of the reconvened Frome Arts Forum, where, under the umbrella of the wonderful Frome Committee, I was able to test the reaction of those present to the idea. I was delighted with the enthusiastic response from the representatives of the Merlin and Memorial Theatres, the Cheese and Grain, the Black Swan, the Frome Community College and Selwood School. Also from Maureen Wishart, founder of Jackdaw's Educational Trust, who so successfully ran the Great Elm Music Festival, and from artists and craftspeople of regional and national importance, the Nunny Jazz Cafe, and finally, the Parachute Theatre Company. I then formed a Frome Festival Association and a committee to run the festival with Anne Goby as secretary, and invited representatives from the arts and entertainment sector that I have already mentioned. In addition, and away, the most important thing that I did, knowing my limitations, as I didn't feel an expert on any particular field, was to seek out experts in their particular fields, the worlds of literature, classical music, jazz, folk, film, and so on. I then encouraged them to form subcommittees and report back to the main committee with their ideas. I never believed that party politics was of any relevance in local authority work, so I was determined to have a chair who was of a different persuasion. I was a Labour councillor, and worked with Dennis Buffrey, a Conservative councillor, who agreed to take on the job of chair. He was an executive at Foster Yeoman, the quarrying company, and through him I met Angela Yeoman, the owner, and she became our first president. I was also fortunate that Stephanie Cole, the lovely actress who lived locally, agreed to be involved with the festival. She introduced me to Pamela Lady Harlech, who became our first patron. The newly formed committee worked on our mission statement, which was to use Frome's unique resources in the arts, crafts and entertainment to promote Frome as a centre for visitors and an excellent place to live and work. Starting any new venture is the hardest part, and the idea for the first Frome Festival is that during an agreed period, all the venues in Frome would promote whatever they happen to be doing at the appointed time as the Frome Festival. This way, the festival gets underway with a minimum of extra cost and will, as the years go by, grow and develop, hopefully, into a festival of renown. I was anxious to include all the various groups and make it a festival we could all join in and celebrate, with arts, crafts, music, dance, drama, walks and talks, and other activities over a 10-day period. I like the idea of the 2 weekends. There is such a wealth of talent in and around Frome that I could only see the festival being a great success and reflect the mood, the new mood of optimism in the town. Timing is crucial to the success of any venture, and after a great deal of thought and negotiation, the favoured time was the beginning of July. The dates settled for the first festival in 2001 were the 29th of June to the 8th of July. I actually got that wrong, as I hadn't taken into consideration the movable timing of the Glastonbury Festival. And as a result, the subsequent festivals were settled for the first Friday in July. Easy for people to remember and put in their diaries. What turned out in practice was the slowness of the venues to pick up the idea of arranging events during those 10 days so that I could promote them all as the Frome Festival. I remember being in Wales at the time, and I wandered into St Cuthbert's Church to discover there was a lunchtime concert in progress. It was a delightful concert given by the Syrinx Ensemble. The next thing I knew, I was booking them for the Frome Festival. I had booked my first event. They became an important part of many festivals to come, and I think of them with great pleasure. Make no doubt about it, I knew nothing about organising or running, let alone financing a festival. I was conscious of a great deal of skepticism, which looking back was quite understandable, as it was a monumental task to start a festival from scratch. I guess there were two ways to start a festival: take 10 years to plan and raise the money, or what turned out to be my way, hit the ground running and do it straight away. Wow, did we do that, with over 100 events in the first festival. I do remember feeling pretty low around December of that year, 2000, when so little was booked and no money coming in, when I heard the postman and found a letter on the doormat from my younger brother Simon, who worked in the USA. Inside, I found a check for $5,000 with a note to say, "I know that it will be a major success under your direction, and I look forward to watching it develop." That seemed to be a turning point. So what I did to secure some credibility was to go to London and meet up with an old friend of mine, Tim Pigott-Smith, who by then was a very well-known actor who had great acclaim in his role as Merrick in The Jewel of the Crown for Granada Television, to see if he would do something in the festival. I'd first met Tim when I did a season with the Bristol Old Vic, when he was at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, and he had subsequently employed me as an actor in several plays when he took over the running of Compass Theatre Company from Anthony Quayle. They were dedicated to taking classical theatres to far-flung places. I then went to see another star actress, Frances de la Tour, who I worked with at Stratford with the Royal Shakespeare Company. And then again, we met up on Broadway and toured North America with Peter Brook's Midsummer Night's Dream. Yippee! They both agreed to come to Frome and perform in the Frome Festival. I now had 2 stars, and I knew I'd be asked, who are your headline acts? This proved invaluable, as when the final events were organised with these actors and others equally well known, I was able to go to our marvellous businesses in Frome, say I was starting a festival, and would they like to buy into success and sponsor an event? Oh, I'm sorry that event is sponsored, but I have another one equally good, especially for you. I shall always be grateful as to how much the business in Frome helped finance the festival. It must have been November 2000, and I was chatting to Russell Mill, who was Mayor of Frome at the time, about trying to start a festival. And he said he was about to head off to Chateau Gontier for a tripartite twinning meeting, and why didn't I come with him? I thought, well, that would be a great chance to announce a festival. I duly stood up at their meeting and officially announced that I would be launching the Frome Festival in July 2001 and all would be welcome. Oh, I found part of my announcement speech. Excuse me. Frome has such a rich artistic and cultural heritage. It is a town steeped in history, which is reflected in the huge variety of important historic buildings, and yet it has no single glory, such as a cathedral or a castle, to spread its fame. The aim of the festival is to create an event that will fly the flag for Frome, putting it on the map nationwide. I had 2 very important advantages. My career as an actor and being at the time a town and district councillor both helped me a great deal in finding the key personnel to help me run the festival. Julia Gray was also a town councillor and someone I got to know. It turned out that she was a very talented graphic designer who agreed to do all the designs for the festival. Indeed, she helped me for all of the 7 years that I ran the festival. I'm immensely grateful to her for her beautifully designed programs. She suggested and then introduced me to Sholto Walker, who did so many of the wonderful designs for the posters and program covers. And to our amazing good fortune, Butler and Tanner agreed to print 30,000 copies of the program completely free of charge. I was also so lucky that the talented Coralie Hyde agreed to design and run the website, and Nikki Marshall was the overall festival editor. The first thing that Julia and I worked on was the logo, which I saw as very important and should be something instantly recognizable as Frome Festival. The logo would appear on all that we did, stationery, posters, program, press releases, etc. In a word, our corporate identity. I was thrilled when Julia came up with the design, which was the reverse image of negative of the St. Aldine logo designed for the 1300th anniversary of our town. It was recognizable as Frome, but somehow different. Excellent. Pete Meinl was another key person. This time my contact was as an actor. He was chief electrician at the Theatre Royal in Bath, where I had performed many times with various touring companies. During those years, we struck up a friendship. And when I learned he lived in Frome, I persuaded him to join the team as production manager. To my utter amazement, he not only agreed, but took 2 weeks unpaid leave to come and work for the Frome Festival. not to mention all his amazing contacts in the theatrical world. Will Angelero, Frome's superbly talented sound engineer, reminded me the other day that we had a recruitment evening at the library, and he had just moved to Frome and came along to see what was going on. He said that Pete approached him and said, "I'm sure there will be something for you to do in the festival." Not only did he produce the sound equipment needed from then on, he also looked after the booking of the bands for the World Food Feast. I must stress, all these people I'm recruiting are unpaid volunteers. This would be a very opportune moment to thank all the myriad of volunteers very much indeed for helping me in countless different ways over all those 7 years. This would take up most of the evening if I started naming them all. However, many of them will come up during the talk. On the subject of finances, I've already said how very generous the local businesses were. The Frome Town Council have always been a great financial supporter, giving the festival £5,000 per year. However, one year, new councillors were elected and the grant was withdrawn. This outraged local businessman and owner of Orchard Lee House, Chris Vincent, who was so enraged that he wrote a cheque for £5,000. The town council relented and reinstated our usual grant, so we did rather well that year. Also, Katie Duke, as the town centre officer for Mendip, used to find us £2,500. Sadly, Somerset County Council did not always match this generosity and occasionally gave £1,000. One year they said they were very sorry, but they had no money to give the festival that year. I said, well, that's a shame. We have the Duke of Gloucester to open the festival at Rook Lane, this chapel this year. Suddenly, they found £1,000 from the Foot and Mouth Fund. The next step was to find an office, and one of the many initiatives I was involved with was conservation, and I worked with Bob Ladd, the Conservation Officer for Mendip District Council, on the Frome Townscape Heritage Initiative. Bob had been very successful in attracting a great deal of money to renovate the important listed buildings in the town, and he let me have a corner of their temporary office in Cork Street. And Mendip lent me a computer, and away we went. When that office closed, we were rescued by Andrew Prince, who let us move into part of Studio Prince workshop in Bath Street. He also generously let us have the use of his large van for moving equipment around for the duration of the festival. After a brief stay in a flat in Cheap Street, I went round the town looking up at the first floor buildings and noticed a possibility above ITEC, the optician, in the marketplace. I knew the brother of the manager and asked for a meeting. When I saw the room, my heart sank. I noticed water dripping from the roof, a new staircase, but no wall. Yes, I could have the room on condition that I put up the wall, complete with fire lobby and doors, rewire that part of the building separately, put in smoke alarm systems in the upstairs room and the shop, plus emergency lighting, and constantly monitor all the leaks. This time my electrical engineering background came in, and I said yes, and started work on the new office, which seemed very worthwhile as it was so central and even had a balcony to welcome everyone to the World Food Feast. So I went out and bought 10 buckets for the leaks and persuaded skilled friends to help me renovate the premises. While the work was being carried out in the depth of winter, Anne and I went to the room upstairs, where we had a sheet pinned to the ceiling with a hole in the middle for a guttering hopper to catch the rainwater. The rate of flow became so great that I had to attach a pipe and open the window to drain the water. Anne and I froze, working away on a January day. Rescue finally came with a conservation grant for the building, which included damaged plasterwork and a leaking roof. The festival owes a great debt of gratitude to iTech for all the years of rent-free use of the office. Thank you very much indeed. I was anxious not to call it an arts festival, as I did not want to alienate anyone, and my catchphrase became something for everyone, entertainment for all. We certainly hit the road running with the first festival, featuring over 100 events. One was It's a Knockout, organised by the Lions and Frome Round Table, which raised a considerable amount of money for the Frome Victoria Hospital. The event involved teams of both juniors and seniors doing very silly things with greasy poles and lots of water to fall into, silly contraptions to navigate, and hampered relay races. A great deal of energy was expelled by all concerned in having a really good time.
They go under the cornet. Everyone going nicely. Under the cornet. Next one's out. Collect the bouncers. Collect them. Keep going forward. Lead at the moment. This is your own academy number, showing. Reminds me of both.
What was interesting was that in the first one or two festivals, I was raising a lot of money for good causes. And I realized that people were coming up to me and asking me to raise money for this or that cause. And I had to say, no, unfortunately, we need the money to run the festival throughout the year. In contrast to It's a Knockout at the first festival, Tim Pigott-Smith agreed to come and direct the Hollow Crown at the Merlin Theatre. It was ideal because we persuaded all the actors to come down for no fee, and the Merlin wanted to raise money for new seating. The Hollow Crown is an anthology devised by John Barton for the Royal Shakespeare Company in 1961, which presents in dramatic form speeches, documents, gossip and music associated with the British monarchy from William the Conqueror to Queen Victoria. Tim was joined by his wife Pamela Miles, and as agreed, Francis de la Tour, and although Nigel Hawthorne was billed to perform, he became very ill, and his replacement caused rather a stir in Frome and the headlines on the front page of the Somerset Standard. It was Charles Dance. Provided the music was the very talented guitarist Martin Best. Oh yes, I had agreed to start the whole evening with a speech of King Richard II from the play by Shakespeare.
He's the
of transport.
And always wanting to be fair, I then organised a similar event for the Merlin Theatre, for the Memorial Theatre, a music and spoken word event called An English Journey. The performers were Dennis Quilly, a very well-known National Theatre actor, and his wife Stella Quilly. I had been on tour of the Royal Hunt of the Sun with him, so persuaded him to come too. And that was a fundraiser for the Memorial Theatre. More theatrical chums appeared throughout the festivals, notably in 2002, Edward Fox, Joanna David, and Gemma Jones delighted us with Rogues and Vagabonds, an entertainment about actors and acting. I wanted to encapsulate all fields, so I was very anxious to include talks and walks. And that first year, we had the talk on the Fussell's Ironworks at Great Elm, given by James Fussell. And then he also led a walk along the Mells River to explore the ruins of the old ironworks. Something that was very special to me was the creation of the World Food Feast, which became a firm favourite throughout the 7 years. I wanted a spectacular way of launching the festival with a free event, although it was the second day, and closing the town to traffic. Head of Logistics Nigel Arbery filled the marketplace with chairs and tables from Frome College. We were able to wine and dine with exotic food from around the world, with all the food being sourced locally and served in eco-friendly plates and cups. All the food stalls charge a similar price with a maximum set. Nicky Hillman from Salisbury Cheese Delicatessen was in charge. It was a wonderful experience with the band playing and a chance to enjoy our lovely traffic-free town.
One of the highlights of this year's festival was the World Food Feast, where it was possible to wine and dine on delicious food from around the world, accompanied by the sound of Latin bands.
The Instrument Makers concert was a very special event too, because I learned that all the craftspeople in Frome had gone to our twin town in Château-Gontier with an exhibition. And amongst those were a harpsichord maker, Chris Barlow, and Lawrence Parnell, who made guitars and mandolins. So we decided to do a concert in St Mary's Church at Innis Hill, featuring our instrument makers making music with accompanying singers. This was a great success and repeated in subsequent years, featuring not just good music, but the skill of Frome craftspeople. There was never any doubt in my mind whatsoever about whether to continue with the festival into a second year. I always planned that this being a lasting thing, partly, I suppose, because it's so hard to get something going, and once it's going, you don't want to stop. Someone suggested a biannual festival, but I thought that would lose the momentum. There had been skepticism initially, but people saw the festival happening and enjoyed events like the World Food Feast and celebrating the town. And those that didn't know about it were contacting the festival office and asking, can we be part of your festival? I went to the ends of the earth to prevent there being any fringe or any breakaway. So whenever an idea was put to me, I would try and absorb it into the main festival. I didn't want a situation like the Edinburgh or Bath festivals where they're all at loggerheads with one another. I think we were very successful in that over the first 7 years. The second year, 2002, I always think of as the year of the orchestra, as we had 3 performing that year. The Bath Philharmonia, conducted by Jason Thornton, the Frome Symphony Orchestra, formed by Stephen Marquis, who I like to call the artist in residence for the first 4 years, not only for conducting the orchestra, but for his wonderful piano recitals. The third orchestra, formed especially to play for the Frome Festival, was called the Frome Festival Orchestra. Oh, yes. Oh, gosh. Press the button. Have a bit of Stephen.
The piano recital was given by Stephen Marquis, the Frome Festival music director, who delighted audiences at last year's festival. He has performed throughout the UK, Europe and New York.
We also introduced the carnival procession. Perhaps I'd seen some of the Rio Carnival on television, and I thought, what a wonderful way to start something, with a big bang and a lot of noise and a lot of joyous music. It was organised by Annabelle McFadden, who also arranged the many workshops. There was involvement from the children and a chance for everyone to perform at the end of the procession at a free concert at the ECOS, European Community of Stones Amphitheatre, drawing on the talents of those involved.
Because I really enjoy being in parades and stuff and dressing up and things. It's just good fun.
Last minute.
Oh, it's so exciting. Been waiting for this for about 2 or 3 months and preparing for it, and the sun's shining and it's going to be great.
Community groups from across Frome have come together to provide this vibrant celebration in the heart of the town. procession arrived at the Ecos Amphitheatre, where the performers provided an evening of dance, drama, circus acts, music and song.
You'll be pleased to know there will now be an interval. Well, you've all stayed. That's wonderful. Just wait till they settle down. Now, the other big innovation in 2002 was the Festival Club under the direction of Joanna Harvey. It was a place to chill out, to have a drink after an evening event, and to enjoy yourself. It took place at St John's Hall in Vicarage Street, now called the Bennett Centre, with a bar and a cafe in the Undercroft, and evening performances and daytime workshops for children and grown-ups in the big hall above. These included belly dancing and circus skills, two of the most popular. But there was no soundproofing in the hall, and after 3 very successful years, there was a gap in 2005. In the following year, a new team came together: Stuart Grant, Anthony Lackney, David Clark, and Simon Carruthers, and it was reborn as the Fez Club in the assembly rooms behind the Memorial Theatre. The Craft on the Hill event was another event that was very dear to my heart. With their marvellous work, wood and stone carving, glass blowing, even brewing, the Milk Street Brewery began at the Griffin Pub. The other reason I wanted to promote the Hill so much was, with my council hat on, was that there were so many places boarded up. We wanted to find ways of promoting Catherine Hill. So we had music, demonstration and stalls, and it was great fun. I remember being asked if I would like to do a bit of glass blowing in the middle of the hill, with a furnace going. So I did blow my first work of art. And many Frome musicians entertained the crowds, including Caroline Radcliffe and Three Corners, and Laurie Parnell, who sang and played on one of the instruments he'd made. Oh, I'm going to show you a film clip now.
I'm doing a collage, but I don't know how it's going to turn out.
say that on film.
One feature of the town's musical life was the existence of jazz performers like Pee Wee Ellis and John Law, who were not only living in the town, but had national and international reputations. Pee Wee was so good to me and the festival by being involved in so many different concerts, not only with various bands he played with, but also bringing other stars to Frome. I can't even remember fees being paid. He was so good to us.
It was a good way to wind down at the end of the festival with this top jazz trio of John Law, Pee Wee Ellis and Dave Goodyear in the intimate setting of the Garden Cafe.
Pee Wee and the great Milanian musician Via Faccatora played a memorable gig at the Cheese and Grain, which was an ideal venue for big musical events. This was a festival first. It was the first concert Via had ever played in the UK with his band, and the first time Pee Wee and Via had even met, although Pee Wee had played many times with Via's father, Ali. It was a real meeting of musical minds, and the concert was absolutely packed to the rafters. Pee was also a regular performer at the Nunny Joss Cafe at the Village Hall, which was another great asset to the Frome Festival. It was like a whole day with activities for children, food and drink. It was a good example of something that had been happening before the festival started, and we were able to incorporate it. On the other hand, the Festival Poetry Cafe at the Garden Cafe, which is taking place this year at the new venue of the Ecos Amphitheatre, was premiered by Chrissy Morrison at the very first Frome Festival. John Law is an extremely talented classical and jazz musician and has been involved in the festival on many occasions. In 2004, for a Film Frome event at the Merlin Theatre, he even created a new semi-improvised score to the silent film South, which he performed in a trio with John Lloyd. I remember another amazing concert with Jason Rebello, who is another international jazz star. Again, the secret was that creative people in Frome were bringing in people they had worked with in other places and contexts to enrich our Frome festival, which is exactly what I tried to do.
A stunning world premiere meeting between two of Britain's brightest piano stars from the world of jazz and classical music. John Law is renowned worldwide for his highly original work, bringing together classical jazz and new music. Jason Rebello is a world-class pianist and one of the best-known names in jazz.
The culmination of all these amazing players, both local and international, was the concert at the Memorial Theatre in 2006 with Peter Donahoe, our artist in residence that year. We were so fortunate, thanks to Jason Thornton, to have an artist who gained such an international reputation as one of the foremost pianists of our time. He joined all the local jazz greats. What an amazing concert that was. The critic, Miles Kington, in The Independent, described the concert as going through a car wash without a car. This was a truly amazing combination of jazz and classical repertoire. And an amazing combination of classical musicians. Included in the lineup were Mike Mower, Ian Bellamy and Pee Wee Ellis on saxophones, John Law keyboard, Martin France drums, Jeremy Little percussion, Darren Edwards voice, members of the Bath Philharmonia and Peter Donahoe piano, and Jason Thornton conducting. The repertoire ranged from Chick Corea to works by both Mike Mower and Pee Wee Ellis and Messiaen. The finale was the original jazz version of Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. What an evening. I'm not sure the audience knew what had hit them. That's got to be one of the top things that I remember. I always tried to look after the artists before and after their performance. That's something I knew was important from my own acting days. Facilities were not always that great, but you just had to do what you could. Love and care for people's physical needs, but not necessarily in a purpose-built green room. We also held events at the Blue House. My motivation was somewhere to show sculpture. Again, going back to the crafts tradition of Frome, there were many people involved in sculpture. I thought the Blue House Garden would be a wonderful place to hold a sculpture exhibition. I've always liked the Terry Hill Big Band because he encouraged local children to play in the band. So I was keen for the band to play. The residents loved it because there wasn't an entry fee, but they could make teas and make quite a bit of money for themselves. It was nice just wandering around, admiring the sculpture, and then sit and listen to some big band music. 2003 was the 50th anniversary of the death of my cousin, Sir Arnold Bax, Master of the King's Music, and I wanted to celebrate that. I approached my friend John Payne, one of a number of successful writers in Frome, to see if he would write something about Arnold Bax. Because although Sir Arnold's passion for Ireland is well known, it's a little known fact that he also wrote poetry under the pseudonym of Dermot O'Byrne. We wanted to amalgamate the words and music of Arnold Bax into an evening of celebration with the wonderful title, Waiting for the Spark of Heaven to Fall. A quotation from Matthew Arnold's poem, Dover Beach. And we had a lovely ensemble playing the music, the Emerald String Quartet and friends. My big mistake was to put myself into that performance, trying to do one of his famous poems relating to the Dublin Easter Rising of 1916. Not very good. The year 2003 was very exciting, as it was the start of the Marston House concerts, thanks to Angela Yeoman, who was an extremely good supporter of the festival. We did 2 concerts that year at Marston House, and on the Saturday was Flying the Flag and the last night of the Proms type event. Jason Thornton and the Bath Philharmonia agreed to play the tone poem Tintagel, my favourite piece of music by Arnold Bax. I'm also proud that he wrote the music for one of the great masterpiece interpretations of Dickens' Oliver Twist, the 1948 film directed by David Lean. So we showed that at the Merlin Theatre. Marston House was the headquarters and offices of Foster Yeoman, the quarrying firm, and was ideal for holding open-air concert because the ground slopes to the south. Through Angela Yeoman, I got in touch with the farmer who owned the field at the bottom, and he agreed that we could put all the infrastructure on his field, with a ha-ha separating it from the audience on the slope. On the Friday night, we had jazz on a summer's evening with Acker Bilk and his Paramount Jazz Band. There was also a lovely indoor concert in the ballroom at Marston House by the Bath Camerata Choir on the first Sunday. Oh, gosh, clip time! And then 2 years later, in 2005, it was the anniversary of the ending of the Second World War. I thought it'd be wonderful to have an event to celebrate that. And on the Saturday night, we had the Glenn Miller Big Band playing, and I thought I could sneak in a fly past by a Spitfire. My most favourite photograph of me is on the roof of Marston House with a phone glued to my ear, signalling the aircraft to come and fly over. This was followed on the Saturday by the Victory Proms with the Bath Philharmonia. I was helped by a company called Amazing Events because the Frome Festival could not possibly accept any financial risks.
This year, Ben Miller's orchestra performed on the Friday, with the traditional proms on the following night.
Weather not too good there. Other events at Marston House in the following year included an early evening event with an ABBA tribute band, which I thought would bring in the parents, children, grandparents, and all the family. Then on Saturday, we had Van Morrison, who agreed to come and play for an all-time low fee of £30,000. The ticket price was the highest of any concert put on during my 7 years. I was able to get Van Morrison through Pee Wee Ellis. They worked together a lot, and Van Morrison used to come and record at Beckington. That was quite a year. And of course, a lot of these evenings ended with fireworks, which is always very popular. The educational work of the Frome Festival began right at the beginning with a production of Benjamin Britten's Noah's Flood at the first festival in 2001. Alan Burgess was the first music director. We had a wonderful actor in James Davis who was up on the rood screen declaiming as God. And to see all those children enjoying themselves was great. This was one of our first educational projects. Then 2002 was the first year I teamed up with Bath Philharmonia, a professional orchestra, and their conductor, Jason Thornton. I approached him and found out they had a very successful outreach program as part of their operation. And it turned out he was a very talented exponent of educational work. Our slogan was entertainment for all. And I was determined not to leave out Critchell School, which is Frome's school for children with special educational needs. I asked Stephanie Cole and her husband Peter Birrell if they would come and narrate the Carnival of the Animals with music by Saint-Saëns. And to top it all, through Jason, I commissioned 2 new animals for the work. And we've got lovely recordings of the rehearsal, which I'd like to show you now.
It's large, round, heavy, and doesn't see very well, and has a nasty habit of flying into things. But he's very good at smelling lovely flower smells. Honeysuckle, sweet peas, roses, all his favourite nectar food which he really likes. One sunny day, Mr. Bumblebee fumbles out of his hole in the old elm tree, out across the field smelling for flowers. It starts to get cloudy, and Mr. Bumblebee feels the first raindrop on his fur.
I like daisies, I like tulips, I like flowers both big and small. But my favourites are the roses, cactuses that smell at all. Busy, 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 Mr. Bumblebee, buzzing, buzzing, buzzing round, tell us what you see. In the evening, when it's bedtime, I come out towards my room. See the people, that's where I live, with all the workers. Busy, 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 Mr. Bumblebee, buzzing, buzzing, buzzing round, tell us what you see. Busy, 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 Mr. Bumblebee, buzzing, buzzing, buzzing round, tell us how it goes.
I wanted to carry on the educational work with Critchell School, but to add a mainstream school. So in 2003, I approached Frome Community College. We wanted to do Scheherazade, East meets West, and Joanna Harvey got together a fantastic Eastern band, while Jason Thornton assembled a classical group from the Bath Philharmonia. Narration was by Stephanie Cole and Peter Birrell, following their success of the previous year. We had a wonderful afternoon concert at Critchell School for all the parents and teachers, and then in the evening we did a concert at St. John's Church. Then we come to the cuckoo tree, which has to be my big highlight of those 7 years. I'd like to commission a children's opera, I said. How much money have you got? Oh, I haven't got any money at the moment. But I was a great believer that if the idea was right, the money would follow. So Frome Festival and the National Foundation for Youth Music jointly commissioned The Cuckoo Tree, based on the children's story by Joan Aitken. The composer Rachel Scott, who had grown up in Frome, composed a vast score for professional chamber orchestra, youth orchestra, junior orchestra, ocarina choir, percussion group, 2 choirs, a Critchell School choir, and 16 soloists as the basis for the libretto. With the help of the Frome Community Learning Partnership, every single school in the group was represented in this project, involving around 120 children. It was directed by the international opera singer Rosa Mannion, choreographed by Lucy Schaffer, and conducted by Jason Thornton, with the help of a team of repeteurs and teachers, as well as masses of volunteers. It was an epic production, fully staged and lit, with an orchestra pit, all in St. John's Church. Nigel Arbery, head of logistics, masterminded the building of the stage and the set. The cuckoo tree was actually the pulpit in disguise, so the children could climb up inside. It was a wonderful set. The rehearsal period was nearly 6 months, rehearsing at St. Louis School, and the final 2 weeks, the children worked on the opera full time. Jason told me that it remains one of the most extraordinary productions he has ever been involved in, and he remembers it for the joy of watching young people discovering opera by taking part in one. I wish we'd recorded the whole program.
And we had an almost impossible task of getting, I think, about 170 children organised and translating this amazing story into a show. And we had, I think, from April to do it once a week. We met up with the children and had 2 hours of rehearsal. And we arrived at St. John's Church last week, and we had absolute chaos on our hands, including working with the builders renewing the roof. And suddenly on Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday a miracle happened, and we had the most amazing and wonderful and joyous show, which has knocked us all for 6, I think. And it's been an extraordinary experience, and it's been great for Frome, and it's been great for everybody involved.
The summer schools came about because of the wealth of musicians and choirs in the area. I talked to Jason Thornton about this, and he put me in touch with Joanna Wiesner, who runs the Minerva Choir in Bath. It was arranged that people would sign up to be part of the choir or part of the orchestra. They would turn up on a Friday night and enroll. The college let us have 2 large rooms, one for the choir and the other for the orchestra. The first year we did this was 2002, and it was Carmina Burana, my choice. That music always knocks me for 6. Jason agreed, and he was going to conduct. There was a rehearsal on the Friday evening, 3 sessions on Saturday, and on Sunday there was a rehearsal in the morning and then 2 performances at the Cheese and Grain. So it was a very exhausting schedule. The summer school that I remember best was Berlioz's Grand Mester Mort in 2003. This required a huge choir of 250, an orchestra of 100, and we had to have extra instruments, no less than 16 timpani, 4 tam-tams, 10 French horns, 8 bassoons, and 6 oboes. I shudder to remember the hire charge. To top it all, we had 4 brass bands playing off stage. With such a variety of percussion instruments, Benedict Hoffnung, son of Gerald Hoffnung, the principal timpanist with the London Mozart players, trained the percussion section. Fantastic. In 2006, after 2 concerts in Frome, the summer school went on tour to Leipzig and Pegua in Germany with artist in residence Peter Donahoe and the Somerset Youth Orchestra, with performances of Liszt Piano Concerto No. 2 and Vaughan Williams' A Sea Symphony. In 2007, we went to France, again with the Somerset Youth Orchestra and the Frome Festival Choir, with Saint-Saëns Symphony No. 3 and Brahms' German Requiem. We toured to Frome's twin town, Château-Gontier, and then we played Paris. I'm very proud of what we achieved with the summer school. Not all the bright ideas of these Frome festivals came from me. A good example is the Comedy Tent in 2003, which was organised by our production manager, Pete Meinel. Not only was he the most popular theatre electrician in the country because of his work at the Bath Theatre Royal, but he had met so many of these performers. In 2006, he persuaded Paul Merton and his improv chums to perform at the festival. He returned in 2007, saying we'd treated him so well the first time, and now Frome was his favourite place to perform. Pete Miner was also an expert on all aspects in the world of folk music. Here's what he wrote about a couple of the folk events at the 2004 festival. Cecil Sharp's Big Night Out, the Mendip Centenary Singers. This unique show featured the finest folk musicians from around the Mendip and Bristol areas. They had constructed a wonderful show using song, music, traditional broom dancing, readings, reminiscences, and projection, recounting the time when the great English folk song and tune collector Cecil Sharp first went to the Castle of Comfort pub on the Mendips to collect songs from the local people. It also featured songs sung at the Mid-Somerset Festival, which was held in Frome in 1904. David Byrne and John Shaw were instrumental in the creation of this show, which was a fantastic success. Over future years, the same team brought us shows about Lord Nelson and Trafalgar and Isambard, King of Brunel, all stories told with great music, singing, puppetry, photos and visuals. Cara Dillon, what a coup! Not only does Cara Dillon live in Frome, but she and her husband Seth Lakeman have always been willing to support and help with the festival. Another full house, this time at the Assembly Rooms, where we were treated to the beautiful voice of a mistress of her trade who has thrilled audiences in every corner of the globe. The show looked and sounded like $1 million. Cara and Sam are true stars and a massive asset to the town. The family Disney film shows that we put on were absolutely fantastic. The reason we got these films was solely through Nicky and Stuart Grant, who ran many years of festival events under the banner of Film Frome. The person who introduced me to them was Barry Fowler, the prime mover in the Real People Film Club at Kilmerston Village Hall. Frome had the first showings in the whole of the United Kingdom of these films. The films were Disney's Piglet Big Movie, 2003, Home on the Range, 2004, Herbie Fully Loaded, 2005, and Disney Pixar's Cars, 2006. There were strict stipulations. They had to be called charity previews, We were absolutely forbidden to call them world premieres. Nicky and Stuart even managed to persuade 20th Century Fox to let us have the family film Dr. Dolittle 2 for the very first festival in 2001. These previews raised significant sums for Somerset-based children's charities and organisations. What I remember most from the many Film Frome events is the Frome on Film documentary project, which was run by Nicky and Stuart, along with Howard Vors of the Media Arts Centre at Frome College and journalist Stephen Tate. They brought Paul Watson, renowned inventor of the fly-on-the-wall documentaries, to Frome to help teach the practitioners of documentary filmmaking to anyone who wanted to learn. Funded by the Heritage Lottery, provided each novice filmmaker with a camera to produce their own story of life in Frome. The resulting film was premiered at the festival and is an extraordinary snapshot of life in our town. I liked walking, and the Frome Festival included walks right from the beginning. We started off, as I have already said, with the Fussell's Ironworks in the Mells River Valley at Great Elm, but there was also a lot of walks within Frome itself, walks that explored the history of Frome, with guides like Derek Gill and John Burkitt Smith. And one of my favourites, the Lost Pubs of Frome, with Bob Ladd leading, which ended up in the Lamb and Fountain, Mothers, which is still there in Castle Street. Some of the tunnels of Frome actually start under the Lamb and Fountain. And the annual Tunnels of Frome Walk was always the first event to sell out when booking opened. In 2005, we had a series of events celebrating the life and work of Gerald Hoffnung, with a Hoffnung cartoon of a crazy choir in full voice decorating the programme cover. As I've mentioned, his timpanist son Benedict plays a lot with the Bath Philharmonia. I got to know him through my own contact with the Bath Phil, and it was really through him that the idea of having an exhibition of his father's work emerged. It was held here at Rook Lane. I was already a fan of Hoffnung, his raconteurism, and that wonderful sketch about the bricks, because he was a comedian as well as a cartoonist. Gerald Hoffnung had illustrated a children's book, The Boy and the Magic, and with Jason Thornton, we took that book as the starting point for another educational project. An artist worked with the children to make a series of banners inspired by the story, which we hung at St. John's Church for the performance, and we recruited Nick Crump, who we'd heard made instruments out of toilets, metal bars, drain pipes, saws, and kitchen sinks, to make instruments with the children. And Jason worked with them to make music to play on those instruments.
Images from the book were projected on a screen behind the performers, while the story was narrated by Jeremy Burnham.
I'm very naughty, 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 naughty.
The story has a cat duet, which was rendered musically by cello and theremin. Let us experience a few moments of the performance. performance was a great success. And Ben Hoffman's reaction?
The literary events were very important to me, not least because the writers under the banner of Words at Frome Festival were wonderful, and they just got on with it, which was really helpful. After their meetings had taken place, Wendy Miller-Williams from Frome Library would report back to the festival committee. It emphasised the library as a big focal point in Frome, as it should be in every town. Frome Library was so good to the festival in let us advertise our festival, as well as hosting many of the literary events. They didn't charge us a penny. The literary group became the inspiration for Frome Writers Collective, who have taken on the main role now of organising literary events in the town. It's another example of the legacy of the festival, like the 2007 festival, as a staging post in the greening of our town. We were delighted to welcome Kevin MacLeod, who lived in Lyon Mendip, to open our flagship event that year, the Green Fair. That same year, 2007, Hidden Gardens was launched as part of the green theme of the festival. It has become one of the major successes of the Frome Festival. There are so many secret corners of this remarkable town. I'd seen a charming small garden in Catherine Hill and thought, wouldn't it be wonderful for people to open their gardens so that others could see behind the walls and fences? The concept built and existing initiatives to open gardens in both Catherine Hill and Keyford. Dinah Bargett was the first coordinator, but a succession of organisers has taken charge since, with the baton passing seamlessly from one to the other. They certainly raised a lot of money for the festival, as well as individual gardens raising money from plant sales and refreshments for their chosen charity. Like the whole culture of experts getting on with the organising and reporting back to the office, this was one we didn't have to put much work into. Running the festival was taking its toll, and I applied to the Arts Council for some funding to pay for a full-time administrator. The grant was refused, but an offer was made to fund the writing of a business plan. I recruited an expert in this type of work, Richard Cragg, who produced an excellent piece of work. However, this was also turned down, and I was told unofficially that the arts lottery funding, which was supposedly ring-fenced for the arts, had been reallocated to the Olympic Games. A further problem was that I did not have the full backing of the district and county councils. The enormity of starting from scratch each year and being solely responsible for raising the money needed, not only to run the actual festival, but fund the annual running cost as an unpaid volunteer, which was what I was certainly taking its toll. I seemed to be working 7 days a week, trying to create a worthwhile community festival, and perhaps unaware of the effect it was having on my health. Coincided with the disappointing news from the Arts Council was the fact that my friends were telling me that if I continued with my workload, my health might suffer in a serious way. It seemed the right time for me to stand down. The festival had been very successful to the extent that the Times had been listing in the top 5 festivals after Glastonbury, and I was certain that I had taken the festival to a point where it was on a roll and nothing would stop it. I couldn't think of a better way to end my talk than to show you that example of what we managed to achieve in 2.5 days from scratch. I'd just like, finally, a very big thank you to Alan Campbell, who filmed the first 4 festivals and provided all the clips I showed you tonight, and to John Payne for all his help he gave me in devising this talk. Well, that is the end of my talk.